And I would say that this Ahrimanic impulse is contributing mightily to a vitiating quality in the Waldorf school, and to a kind of tiring out, to a kind of loss of energy, direction, and in a certain way it's as though the spoils, the booty of this crumbling empire are going over then into the public school world, and that's fine. You know, Steiner had said the Roman Empire had to collapse because the vitality of the barbarians was so great that they were going to carry whatever was worthwhile of Rome into a completely different way throughout Europe as they started to move north again. And in a certain way, I'm not saying this in an absolute sense, but having recently visited 7 charter schools in California and working now as an adjunct faculty member in a program training public school teachers, charter school teachers, to be Waldorf school charter teachers, I am rather amazed at the enthusiasm, the fire, the life that is there, including a real wish to bring spirituality and festivals and such things into the charter school movement. Remarkable to see that, because so many Waldorf schools that I visit are hardly there at all. So how can we understand this sort of Ahrimanic impulse working into Waldorf education? Well, parents love Waldorf schools because the children are protected, the children are sheltered from this incredibly Ahrimanic world in which we live today, especially the world of technology and the world of all that moves too quickly and too loud and too harshly for the health of a child. And that's perfectly good and right. We can, in a way, as I often tell parents, don't change your lifestyle. You know, don't feel guilty that you're not like a kindergarten teacher with your child. Recognize that for 3 or 4 or 5 hours a day, your child can go to a Waldorf school. That will counterbalance the other 19 hours of chaos and madness that probably prevails in your home. That's what Waldorf is all about. It's a balancing factor. Steiner did not want to turn back the hand of time and bring us back to a kind of Luddite, you know, hobbit-like existence, but rather to educate individuals who'd be strong enough to find their way into this world, which, as he said, they created after all, and which they really love. So we as Waldorf educators have to be careful to protect them on the one hand, but not to stop them from loving this world with all of its failings and all of its great threats to our very humanity. And this delicate balance between protection and openness, this breathing, is an important component of Waldorf education. The problem is that Waldorf schools do an equally effective job, I think sometimes a more effective job, at protecting us, the teachers, from the world, from the modern world. Because there's so much work to do in the school. There's such a strong community spirit there. And the teachers are also often busy in an administrative or semi-administrative role as well. There's hardly any time to read the newspaper, to surf the net, to just look out there and kind of experience what this world is like nowadays. You know, to spend a few days just walking down city streets, observing people. So sometimes help is needed from outside. And in a way, Ahriman sort of chose his own special agent to do this, to give the Waldorf schools a real kick, we could say, a shot in the arm. And this was an individual who was trained as an engineer, an electrical engineer, so he had a thoroughly good modern Ahrimanic education. He sent his son to a Waldorf school, and he was not very happy. He loved the lower grades, and he had tremendous respect for his child's class teacher. But when they got to the upper grades and the hard sciences, the physical sciences, were being taught, he was shocked that it was just sort of drawing lab apparatus and not really penetrating the quantifiable phenomena that he understood to be physics. So he offered the school to come in and teach, to really give these kids some real physics. And the school was quite reluctant to have him come in, and in a certain way stonewalled him. Never really said no, but made it clear their answer was not yes. So he went down the block to look at the books that the teachers read that underlay their scientific work, and there he discovered the work of Rudolf Steiner. And he actually is probably one of the best read students of Rudolf Steiner in the United States, maybe even in the world at this point. I've actually told him that when he crosses the threshold of the spiritual world, he's probably going to be a teacher to anthroposophists who cross. He was shocked to see what underlies Waldorf education, that it's spiritual, and that the sciences are being taught from truly a spiritual point of view, that the human being is more than just a physical machine-like apparatus, but has different bodies. And he could see this is getting mixed up with the science here. This is pseudoscience. It's really anthroposophy for children. They're really preparing kids to become anthroposophists. And he had gone to Catholic school himself. He said, it's a parochial school. They disguise it as a secular school, but it's not. So he pulled his child out of the school before too long and began writing articles in sort of secular humanist magazines. Magazines which have a readership usually of, 100, 103 people, something like that. Obviously, he didn't get very far. Then he decided to become a little bit more assertive. He actually began to picket schools now and then, with placards accusing Waldorf schools of doing all sorts of things to take children off the right materialistic path that education is supposed to provide for them. There again, he got in the newspaper now and then, but it certainly didn't keep people from crossing his picket line and bringing their children to Waldorf schools. And so it would have ended. I've met hundreds of dads like this who got dissatisfied with Waldorf education as it went up the grades and felt it wasn't hard and fast and solid enough, and talked to others and ridiculed it and so on. However, at this moment, the internet had just become accessible to the general public. And as an electrical engineer, he figured his way on the internet very, very quickly and created, in those days there weren't websites yet for individuals, but there were chat groups. You could start a group of people who email each other, and even in real time could be carrying on a dialogue. And this became what was to be called the Waldorf Critics List. And the gentleman I'm speaking about is named Dan Dugan. And he began then to just say fairly outrageous things about Waldorf schools. And I won't say that they were complete falsehoods by any means. Some of